Greetings, students. I am Professor Paul Munsey. I'm going to be your geography instructor for this semester, and this video is just an overview of how the class is going to work. Very quickly, for those of you who are in dual enrollment and you're using a school computer, you're definitely right away going to have to go to your school administration and make sure that the computer allows you to put honor lock on it and that you have access to Google searches, because there are going to be assignments where you're going to be looking at news stories using Google. Now, I imagine when you signed up for this class, you were thinking maps, right? We think geography and we think where things are at. And that is certainly part of this class, but it's not the majority of this class. World Regional Geography is really going to be looking at two major parts of humanity. One of it is regional cultures. So the Japanese culture is different from the Chinese culture, which is different from the Indian culture. And there's, of course, microcultures in there that we'll be talking about. And when I talk about culture, I'm not just talking about the type of entertainment or the type of food. I'm talking about political systems, religious systems, economic systems, both how they exist within different countries, different regions, and how they exist within the global context. The other major half of this course is going to be current events. There's genocides happening in the world right now. There have been at least since World War II. There are major economic shifts that are taking place. There are, of course, wars that are happening. There are popular movements where people are trying to reform their governments, trying to reform the way that they are governed and how their lives are lived. These are the things that we're really going to be studying in this course. And so quickly, to just kind of go through some of the basics of how our Canvas shell works and the things that you need to know in it. If you look here underneath our course documents and resources, this is going to have all of the contact points that you need to have. It's also going to have this nifty little course basics file that you can use in case you forget anything from this video. First off, there are going to be required tutor meetings. You're going to have to meet with your tutor once every unit, so that's about once a month. I'll talk about that in a second. You will be able to access her Zoom room from here. Second, we are going to be doing some news research where you're going to be using a library resource. You don't have to meet with our librarian. However, I highly suggest that you do so, particularly before our first news research assignment. I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to give you a practice assignment that you can do if you want to. You don't have to, but I highly suggest that you do, because when we get to that first news research assignment, if you can't complete it, you're just not going to get credit for it. There's no extension on it. So your librarian, our college librarian, is going to be helpful in you accessing the resources that you need. Like I said, you are going to be using Honor Lock in this class. This is just a tool that makes sure that you're actually doing your own work. This means that you're going to be video recorded while you're doing your quizzes and exams. It also means that your screen is going to be recorded so I can see what you're looking at while you're taking your videos and exams. So in order to know what my Honor Lock protocols are, you're going to need to watch this Honor Lock exam and quiz instructions. I have a very specific set of rules that I use for when you use Honor Lock. It's not just a matter of turning it on. You're going to have to do a little procedure at the beginning of each quiz. It's very quick, and I add time to the quizzes so that you have time to do it. But if you don't follow those instructions, you're not going to be getting credit for your work. I'll come back to this map making here in a second, or the labeling for maps, but these last four bits right here, the college's library page, you are going to be using the college's library page. You're going to actually be using a very specific resource from it, so you can just click on this to get to that page. If you are having technical problems, so if your computer's not working, if Honor Lock's not working, I should not be your first stop. I mean, it's always good to communicate. You should let me know what's going on, but the people that can help you with those technical problems with your computer or Canvas issues are going to be the college's service center. You'll notice here, this is not just a phone number. It also includes a link. Let's just go ahead and open that up. So you can see it takes you to their page. It includes their email, their hours of operation. If you're having problems getting hold of our tutor, which you probably are not, but if you want additional help or for other classes where you need a tutor or you need help with your writing, we do have the College's Tutoring and Writing Center. Again, phone number plus their webpage. And finally, if you have the need for any accommodations for any disabilities, and those disabilities, it could be a disability with note taking. It could be that you broke your arm, right? And typing is going to be really hard. Disability Services is who you're going to contact. They set up the accommodations and then they let me know what the accommodations are. But I can't give you special accommodations without you going through them. And again, this could be anything that happens in life that causes you to need some type of accommodation. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this course basics because this is going to outline how all of our assignments are going to work. First off, in our first week, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to send me an email. One of the things that you're going to need to learn in this course and in college in general is how to communicate professionally. So every time you send me a message, you have to start off with something in the subject bar that says precisely what you're talking about, or at least gives me an idea, I guess I should say, of what you're going to be talking about before I open it. You cannot leave the subject bar blank. If you do, I just write back to you and say, please write this email again. And if you're needing an answer that day, you might not get the answer that day. So make sure that if you're, a question about quiz 1, or maybe you have thoughts about things happening in China, and so you just title it Xi Jinping Thoughts. Xi Jinping is the current president of China as of this recording. Second, you got to say hello. So like, hello, Professor. Hi, Paul. I obviously have different names on here, but my name is Paul, Professor Muncy, or just Paul. Any of that works, but you have to acknowledge the person you're talking to. Third, you got to use complete sentences. That means you have to capitalize the first letter of each sentence. You have to capitalize proper nouns. You have to use proper punctuation. I know, like with text speak, sometimes we're in the habit of just kind of laying out words without all those formalities. The formalities are required. And finally, when you're done, say something like, cheers, Paul Muncy, or sincerely, Paul Muncy. Because if I was the one writing it, or if your name's Chuck Howard, thank you very much, Chuck Howard. But you have to sign off. Now, do be aware that if I respond to you and you respond back, you don't have to say hello and goodbye every time. That's just on the very first email exchange. But if you start a new email, if you send me a new message about a different thing, again, introduce yourself, subject bar, sign off in that first message. All right. Quizzes. In this course, one of the ways that I make sure you're staying up to date with materials is that we have a few quizzes spaced out. What I've found in the past is if I don't do quizzes, and we all do this, we have a tendency to put things off, and all of a sudden students are trying to cram in dozens of hours of work before the exam. So your quizzes are checkups midway through each unit. Now, for our quizzes, I will always tell you what period of time they're covering. So maybe, this one might deal with everything from week 5 and Tuesday through Thursday of week 6. That is all you have to be prepared for in that quiz. And you are allowed to use handwritten notes for my quizzes. I'm going to be really clear about this: handwritten, not typed notes. I want to make sure that you are engaging with the materials. You're not having AI summarize it for you. You are figuring out what you need to know. And a quick note on notes. When you take notes, some general advice I give. Number 1, do not write in full sentences. These quizzes are timed, and if you're going through and you're just reading books and books worth of notes that you've written out, you'll probably run out of time. Not to mention, we've all had that experience where we've been reading a book and we're into it, but we have another thought and we get through 2 or 3 pages and our eyes have been going through, but we were checked out. When you don't write in full sentences, when you leave off any type of words that, like the or or from, the prepositions and articles that are unnecessary, if you use abbreviations, if you use symbols in your note taking, it forces your mind to be engaged when you review them. Secondly, Your notes need to do two things. One, they need to capture the big picture of a source, whether it's a textbook reading or a video. And two, they need to capture specific facts. And so what I really encourage you to do is if you have a reading underneath a heading and it covers one page from your textbook or half a page from your textbook, you should have one statement that summarizes what the big picture is, and then you should just bullet points all the specific facts underneath this. This also helps with the issue of plagiarism. Because again, this is a common thing that many of us do. We read something new that we've never learned before, and we just copy down the sentence into our notes. And then you take an exam and you copy that sentence from your notes, or a quiz, I should say, copy that sentence from your notes into your quiz. You've now just plagiarized your source. I'm not looking for your ability to repeat somebody else's words back to me. I'm looking for your ability to take a lot of information, synthesize it inside yourself, inside your own mind, figure out what it means to you, and then explain your understanding. This is something that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. You might not be really good at it for the first few weeks, first month. That's okay, because I have an improvement curve in this class. I'm going to come back to that. Finally, if you do use notes in your quizzes, you need to send those notes to me, take pictures of them, and send them to me in the Canvas inbox. Again, this helps me make sure that you're actually using your notes. Even though I have HonorLock protocols, sometimes students find ways around the HonorLock protocols, and they end up using things that maybe come from Google or AI, which I want to be really clear is not allowed on any of our quizzes, at least none of our content quizzes or exams. You have to use your own notes. Well, if you have that in your notes and you sent it to me before you started the quiz, I know that you were using your own notes and not looking something up. And to be really clear, when I say content quizzes, I mean quizzes that cover things that we read or watched in this course. You don't get any credit for including information from outside this course. So let's say you do some readings, you do some viewings, and then you want to go learn on your own, you want to go Google some things, or you want to read other books. That's awesome. But you're not going to get any credit for that knowledge. The only credit I give on our content quizzes and our exams is credit for showing that you understand the sources that we use. And if you're giving me outside information, I'm going to be inspecting your videos and your notes very closely to make sure that you're not Googling things or using some type of generative AI during the quiz or exam. And if you do, the policy is the first time you get caught, it's a 0 for the assignment. I file a report with the college. Second time, it is an F for the class, and I file another report with the college. Okay. News research. We're going to have 4, maybe 5 news research assignments in this class, where you're going to learn about something happening in part of the world in our videos and in our readings. And then you're going to look up a news article that adds something new to what we are studying. It can't just repeat everything from our videos. And so you always have to do your videos first. In addition to having to look up that news article and then summarize it for me, and you're also going to have to explain how it relates to the stuff you already studied. You are also going to have to use a tool in our library called the Ad Fontes Media Bias Chart. You're going to have to be looking into how biased is the source that you're looking at. That is the thing that I'm going to send you a practice assignment of at the beginning of about week 2. And that is the thing that you're going to want to work with our librarian on. I'm going to make a separate video on how to use that. But be aware that doing the practice assignment really will benefit you when it comes to your following news research assignments. It's a little bit complicated. It's not really complicated once you learn how to use the tool. But one of the things we need to be aware of is what is the bias of any news source that we are actually working with. And a lot of this class is going to be about current events. Maps. This is a geography class, and so you are going to be drawing maps of the world. The way these map assignments work, let's go ahead and open one up. So this is how our map assignments look. They will give you the instructions that you need to label your maps clearly. Again, I'll come back to the actual form that I'm looking for labeling maps. One of the things that's really important when it comes to these maps is that they have to be legible. So I have to be able to read every letter that you write out. They have to be spelled correctly. So spelling actually counts on our maps. Doesn't count on anything else that we do. And the picture has to be clear enough that I can actually read it. Sometimes students will use like a webcam, it'll be really fuzzy. If I can't read it, I can't give you credit for it. So make sure you're using a good camera. If you have to, borrow somebody else's camera if you don't have a good one, but they have to be crystal clear images. Let's go ahead and download this and see what it looks like. So on these maps, I provide the outline. You don't have to use this, but if you want to print up these outlines, it's certainly a lot easier to work with the outline. You will then have to go through and look up either if you have an atlas and want to use it, or just Google all of this. You have to find all of these regions. The easiest way on this first one is to actually just look up the United Nations Geoscheme. It'll show you all of these, all the world's oceans, all the world's major seas, major cities. All of that is going to go on one map. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about labeling. If we look at our guideline for labeling maps, cities need to be labeled with a dot. That is the only thing that's labeled with a dot. Do not bullet point your actual words. The only dots I should see on the map are the cities themselves. If you can, put the name of the city up to the right. If that doesn't fit, down to the right. If that doesn't fit, over to the left. If that doesn't fit, down to the left. And if none of that fits, you can use arrows, but the arrow needs to point at the dot, point at the thing you're labeling, not at the label. For your rivers, if you can use a blue felt tip pen, great. You don't have to use a blue pen if you don't have colors, but it certainly adds to clarity, and clarity is one of the main things I'm grading you on. Any type of region, if I ask for a plateau or for a desert, it needs to be clearly outlined. If you use any shading or colors, they need to be inside the lines. And finally, for any mountains, you do need to use these upside down V's to label mountain ranges. If it's a single mountain, just one upside down V. You also absolutely must use borders. I'm not looking just for the label where things at. Where are the borders? Now, I'm not a good artist. I'm not expecting you to be a great artist. What I am expecting is that everything is placed correctly in relation to each other. So if you place South Africa to the east of West Africa, it's going to be incorrect. As long as things are proportionally correct, and they are relationally correct to each other, you're going to be good to go. Finally, for our maps, there's always going to be more than one map due for an assignment. So all of this that we just went over, again, United Nations Geoscheme, the world's oceans, major seas, major cities, all of that goes on one map. And then there will be a second map for this one, where you're going to have to find the major parallels, the major meridians, and finally, the major climate groups. Now, when it comes to climate, you're going to have a video on this, but whenever I have you label climate, I am going to give you the climates. So this is your reference point. You can't print this up and turn it in. You have to put this onto your map, and you have to find a way to label those climates so they're all distinct. You can use colors, you can use different shadings, and you need to actually have a key on the map that tells me what color or what style of shading relates to what climate. These maps are not just going to be used as assignments. You're going to have location questions on your exams. I'm going to come back to exams here in a second, where you have to memorize where things are at. And then in your exams, I am going to give you maps labeled with letters, and you're going to tell me that letter A is a polar climate, or letter B is the city of Tokyo. So the maps you make are not just assignments, they are going to be your study tools. Okay, two other forms of assignments we have in here. Exams. Our exams are always going to cover one unit. So our first unit is on the basics of geography. Your exam is going to be on that. And then I'm not going to test you on that stuff again. Our second exam is on East Asia, South Asia, and Oceania. Australia, New Zealand, Polynesia, and whatnot. And once I test you on that, I'm not going to test you on it again. All of our exams are broken up into two parts. The first part is completely on memorization. That is going to include map questions. Like I said before, I'll give you letters on maps. You're going to tell me what they mean. There are going to be some basic definition questions. So I might ask you to describe a geographical term, or describe a religion, or describe a political system, or describe an important person. And finally, there are images that you're going to need to memorize. Let's take a look at those. At the top of each module, that unit's images will be posted. Now, these images will deal with different landmarks, like you should know what the Eiffel Tower looks like. You should know what Mount Kilimanjaro looks like. In our first unit, it's going to include things like different types of landforms, different types of climates that you need to identify, different types of map projections, different types of maps, and different religious symbols. After this first unit, it's going to be a lot more of people and landmarks. Okay, so that's the first part of each exam. Memorize and talk about where things are located, basic definitions, and identify different images. The second part of each exam, you get to use a single 4x6 note card. You can write on both sides. Again, has to be handwritten. And I'm going to be asking you much broader questions, essentially essay questions, where I'm going to ask you to describe things. Now, these things might be describe a political system in greater depth or religion in greater depth. But after we get past our first unit, it's going to be things more about describing different cultures or different political systems. As I said earlier in the video, part of it is going to be describing current events, what's happening in the world. That's about half of what we do in this class, is just knowing what the state of the world is right now. Now, with this note card, you will not be able to fit everything that you need to know onto the note card. You need to go through your notes, study your notes, internalize as much as you can, and then use the note card for things that you struggle with memorizing. For me, names is a big one. And sometimes all you need is a key word. So let's say we're talking about China, and you need to remember that the North China Plain is where the Yellow River runs through, and the Yellow River has been a source of agricultural boom for China. It's the reason, part of the reason that China has such a huge population. You've studied it, you know it, but when you start the exam, it might fly your mind. You might just put on the note card something like Yellow River, important for Chinese population. Now, you can't just put that on the exam, Yellow River, important for Chinese population. You need to explain why it's important. But having it on your note card hopefully triggers your mind to remember to talk about it. Finally, our tutor meetings. You're going to have one tutor meeting per unit. It's not at the end of the unit. It's usually by the middle of the unit. And these are going to be pretty quick. You need to make sure you make an appointment with your tutor at least a week in advance. You can't make an appointment the day before. So if something is due on August 27th, and I'm not sure what date it is actually due, that's on your calendar, you need to make your appointment by August 20th, hopefully sooner. In that tutor meeting, show up with 2 good questions. Maybe you're confused as to how the communist system works, or maybe you're confused as to what the difference between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism is. Or maybe you show up and you feel like you already know all of it. You don't have any questions, in which case your tutor is going to ask you 2 questions. Now, the reason why I do this is, number one, the best way to learn is to talk things out loud. Anything you're studying, you should be telling your friends or your family about it. You should be hearing from them what they're studying. This is an important part of college, is interacting with other students. Working through those concepts together helps to internalize them. 2, I know that going to the tutor sometimes can be uncomfortable for a lot of us. And so I'm making a requirement, a graded requirement. It's 10% of your overall grade, in order to hopefully get you to not just go that one time, but to go multiple times. Once you make that connection. As you'll see here in a second, there's an opportunity for extra credit there. Very quickly, with academic integrity, you can't use AI in this course. You can't use AI to summarize things for you. You can't use AI to create things for you. Your maps have to be hand-drawn. Your notes have to be your own. I am looking for you to develop your own mind. I am not looking for you to be good at looking up something and repeating somebody else's words, whether that be my videos or other videos or the textbook or AI. For extra credit in this class, the main way to earn extra credit is to work with our tutor more than the minimum, or to work with me. You can always make appointments with me to go over materials and talk them out. We keep track of how long you've spent with us. And at the end of the semester, I total all that up. And let's say one person has spent 20 hours with the tutor throughout the semester, spent more than anybody else. That person's going to get 10% extra credit to their overall grade. Let's say the next closest person spent 10 hours with the tutor. That person's going to get 5% to their overall grade. In other words, there's a little bit of competition here. Now, it is not just a matter of video back and forth. Good emails, meaningful emails, not emails of just like, hey, when is something due, but having ideas about the current things that we're studying, having good questions about it. I also keep a tally of all of that, and I add that up to part of your class participation. It is your class participation above and beyond the minimum that can get you that extra credit. And additionally, beyond the extra credit, there is an improvement curve in this course. I do not expect you to come into this course knowing how to do world regional geography. I expect you to finish this course knowing how to do it. And what that means is you might get an F on the first exam. That does not stop you from getting an A in this course. Let's say you get an F on the first exam. You get a lot of feedback. You think about what you can do better. You take better notes. You strategize on your note card better. You study harder. And the next exam, you get a D. It's not great, it's better. And you take that feedback and you keep working. The next exam, you get a C. And the next exam, you get a B. I see that steady improvement throughout the course. I curve all of your exam grades up to a B, to where you finish. Now, if you're getting like D, 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 B, I don't curve it all the way up. You're still going to get a little bit of a bump on that improvement curve. But it is about the steady growth. I reward steady growth. If you want to come see me in my office here on campus, I'm in Weller 1317. These are my office hours, though I imagine as an online class, more than likely you'll want to make an appointment with me. This is going to be a challenging class, 9 hours of work a week on average, which means some of you might have to do more, some of you might have to do or might be able to do a little bit less. But by the time we're done with this class, the globe, when you look at a map of the world, it is going to look radically different to you. You're not just going to know where things are. You're going to know what types of cultures exist, how they relate to each other. I think most importantly, you're going to have an idea as to what is happening across the globe right now. I'm looking forward to working with you. Let's have a fun semester.